Thanks for tuning into this broadcast, and we're looking forward to very interesting and a conversation wherein I learn a lot, I'm sure, because when I read this book, and I'm holding this book called Behold the Leviathan, and when I read this book, I was fascinated by some of the data. We live in a country wherein so much is happening, and when you read a book like this, you realize that you don't know half of it, and the remaining half you don't even know that you didn't know. That's the point about Saurabh Mukherjea and Nandita Rajahans's book. Saurabh, fascinating read. Thanks so much for writing this. More importantly. So, Saurabh, I would love to know what's this title about? Because I realize that it's a large mammal or a whale. What inspired this title?
So look, the title has a double meaning, right? As in the best Bollywood songs, the title has a double meaning. So there was in biblical terms, Leviathan means a big sea monster. Okay? That's the Purane Zamane ka meaning. Then around 400 years ago, a British economist called Thomas Hobbes, right, smart guy, he called the government a Leviathan. He said, the British government is a Leviathan. And what he meant was, in any country, a government can be a force for the good, but it can also become a monster. And therefore, the term Leviathan, ever since then, has been associated with big government, powerful government, which can do so much for good, but it can also do things which are damaging for the country. And that's why I use the term Behold the Leviathan, because I think at different junctures in Indian history, the Indian government's role has varied, and chapter 2 of the book explains how Indian government policies over the last 100 years have played a role in changing our country. But then I gave it a subtext, right? The subtitle is that Behold the Leviathan, so government is what it is, but the rise of our country is unusual. There is no other country in the history of the planet which became a democracy with everybody having a vote when it was still a poor country. No other country gave everybody the vote when it was still poor. America, when it became independent, was poor, but it didn't give everybody the vote. Only rich white men had the vote. By the time everybody in America got a vote, America was a developed first world country, and ditto by and large for Britain as well. Same applies, right? So we're the only country on the face of the planet which gave everybody the vote when we were amongst the poorest nations in the world. And I think our rise, our ascent is a remarkable story. We've tried to capture that in the first 3 chapters, Neeraj. And then the last 5 chapters of the book is what lies ahead for us, right? Why is Indian society, why is the Indian economy changing in unexpected ways? And how can we as citizens, as investors, profit from it?
Yeah, and I'd love to probe all of those, but I want to start off with the first page. I don't know the terminology for it, but the cover on the left hand side has this thing about challenging decision makers, or in defiance of stereotype thinking as well. Tell us a bit about that.
So that was very kind of TV Mohandas Pai ji to read the book, and he read the book and he was very excited, and he said, this is my point of view on the book, Saurabh. And we thought, given that he's such an articulate champion of India, we thought we should quote him. The way we are challenging decision makers is we are saying that that a lot of the preconceived notions about India are actually incorrect. So, for example, one consistent notion about India, not just abroad, but even in India, is that women ka to kuch nahi ho raha. Women are not progressing. Female labor force participation rate to hamari piti hui hai is a conventional view. And depending on who you're talking to and how late in the night it is, they'll say either hum Pakistan ke niche hai, or hum Saudi Arabia ke niche hai, ya hum Afghanistan ke niche, right? That's the kind of thing you hear about, right? So in the book we've shown that that's actually not the case. Female labor force participation has risen significantly over the last 5-6 years, and especially in women aged 25 to 35. Now, why is that important? Because we've shown in the book that at all ages, from primary school through to university, more girls are studying than boys. Girls' pass rates are higher. Naturally, therefore, women are going to college in greater numbers, and therefore, if you really want to measure the rise of India's female labor force, look at girls who are coming out of university, and there the labor force participation is rising steeply. And therefore, rather than comparing us to other countries and belittling our achievements, and especially the achievements of our women, we've said the data suggests that Indian women actually are rising faster than men. And most interestingly, Neeraj, Indian women now have more money in their bank accounts than men in urban areas. And even more fascinatingly, Indian women's default rates are half that of men. Right? So a story, conventional stories, women piche reh gayi hai, patriarchal conservative society that's is holding them back. Our story, basis data, basis our observation of the countries, women actually forging ahead, right? Even more interestingly, women from less privileged backgrounds, right? In our government data, you can see scheduled caste, scheduled tribe women ka education rate. SC, ST women's education is rising even faster, right? So the conventional discourse is, पिछड़े हुए वर्ग, oppressed people, रह गए, सरकार ने पीछे छोड़ दिया. Maybe that's the case, but the data suggests otherwise in a range of subjects, and that's why we've said the conventional discourse is incorrect on a lot of fronts, especially on issues to do with achievement, education, employment, earnings, progress.
Wow. Yeah, and this holds true for my household, by the way. My wife has more savings than I do. She's miles ahead than I am. So, well,
it's amazing. No, everybody I talk to broadly has the same experience, but somehow at the collective level, our perception is that somehow women are not progressing. Our view in the book, and very genuinely in real life, our view is Indian women are actually progressing faster than men on most counts.
So, by the way, since we are on that, I'll invoke that and then move on to the other things. But in that chapter, you also write that there has been an uptick, but the participation rate has not grown as
so,
par,
so
right?
women are female labor force participation was around 20-25 a decade ago. It's at 36-37. So that means we're still significantly lower than men. Given that women are half of our population, if we can get that 36-37 to 45-50, we're literally pulling a bigger chunk of half the population onto the labor force, and I think that's what makes life in India exciting. We still are amongst the world's 50 poorest countries. So even though we're the fourth largest stock market and the fifth largest economy, we're amongst the 50 poorest countries. There's plenty to do, right? Puri kahani baki hai. There's plenty to do. There's plenty of things we can improve upon. But we're improving on the back of momentum. We're improving on the back of good progress over the last 20-30 years.
And it's very interesting that when you talk about the narrative, I think in the first chapter itself, everybody talks about the tech stack, Jam, Trinity, etc. But आप बोल रहे हो कि वो एक बहुत important factor है. But उसके अलावा the safety factor, that a safer and a more secure country, and economic policy reforms. Talk a bit about this.
Yeah, that's a lovely point. I mean, we first, we like economists, हमने सारा data इकट्ठा किया. We did this lovely crunching, and then I was asking myself one day, why is it that we as investors and economists can see the progress? Why can't the average Joe? Right? Why can't the average Joe or average Jane, why can't they see it? And then something very interesting happened. I'd gone to Tokyo on work, and a smart bunch of people, the Asia Society, said, can you talk to our members about India mein kya ho raha hai? And they asked me, what do you think about our country? And I said, dekhiye, I landed in Tokyo yesterday. Your airport was okay. Our airports are better. And I gave the example that when I go to Bombay airport or Bangalore airport or Delhi airport, I don't have to take any piece of paper, ticket, passport out of my pocket. I show my face in a camera. I do that roughly thrice, and I'm through to the plane gate. And I said that because that's my lived life. I've been using Digi Yatra for the last couple of years. And then I was reading on YouTube, right, that people, many of the Indians, who said, nahi, aisa nahi hai, that Saurav's making it up. And I was telling myself, Digi Yatra is free. It's there for 2 years. It's not some rocket science. And yet people don't use it. And when I say that it exists, people believe it doesn't exist. So that's when I realized that a big part of life is how you psychologically frame the world. What is your mental narrative about your own life, about your country? If your mental narrative is that we are beaten, we are down, hum pichhde varg mein hai, etc., then boss, it doesn't matter if the economy is growing at 55% or 5%, it's not going to work out for you. But if your mental narrative is we are a society and a country on the make, yes, there's lots of areas we need to work on. But we're a society and a country on the make. Each of us plays our little role in making the society, making this economy better. But if your mental narrative is positive, it's of strength and of progress, then small achievements like Digi Yatra will mean a lot to you. You see how it can improve your life rather than saying it doesn't exist, I can't benefit from it, right? And I think India's done really well on that front over the last 10, 20 years. And one of the reasons we cited in the book, my favorite chart from the book is the number of deaths from terrorist attacks, insurgencies has come down sharply. So just to put some broad numbers around it, at the turn of the century, every year, around 2,500 Indians were getting killed by terrorists and insurgents and unfortunate events, right? So 2,500 turn of the century, which means every week some 50 people were getting killed. Every day 10 people were getting killed, right? Regular, normal people getting killed for no reason at all. That number from 2,500 is below 200 a year. right? So in the space of a generation, we've created a safer country to live in. I remember growing up in Delhi in the 80s, in the wake of Mrs. Gandhi's assassination, and in the evening people wouldn't, Delhi, I'm talking about the national capital, in the evening we wouldn't go for night walks, my parents wouldn't go out for an evening walk, because genuinely there was a threat that you could get shot whilst going for a night walk in New Delhi, right, in premier parts of Delhi. If I said that story to anybody in India, they would refuse to believe it. That was the Delhi I grew up in, 86, 87, 88, 89. I still remember that, right? Courtesy the tragic events that took place in that era. We've created a safer society. If you create a safer society, naturally people start thinking about better things to do. And the whole story around the India stack, the rise of women, going from becoming a desperately poor third world country to a less poor nation. That's the mental narrative. Nothing exemplifies this more than chess, Neeraj. In chess, we've gone from being nobody 20 years ago to the world's preeminent chess power. And hopefully next month, when Gukesh from Chennai plays Ding Liren, hopefully we'll have the world will have its youngest chess champion, and India will have its first ever chess champion. We now have the same number of chess grandmasters as America and China. As I said, 20 years ago, we were nowhere in the picture.
Yeah, and Gukesh has already created a record of the first youngest to participate in a final any which way, right?
Absolutely. And then I think 3 weeks ago, we became the first country ever to win the chess men's and women's Olympiad. So we won the chess men's and women's Olympiad simultaneously, the first country to ever do so.
Yeah, they're fascinating stuff. But just one more question, Saurabh, on this. The economic policy is the third point that gets relegated. We talk about safety, we talk about the jam trinity, which is an economic miracle of sorts, yes. But in some sense, now considered by everybody as chalo ye to hai.
Par for the course.
Yeah, par for the course, exactly. But the economic policy part, just talk a bit about that. So I think some numbers that stand out for you.
So I think two parts to it. I think part of it, as you said, right, when an economic policy, liberalization in its totality, for example, right, I think it was such a hard-won victory for the country in summer of 91, July 91, when P.V. Narasimha Rao ji and Manmohan Singh expedited liberalization. It was an epic triumph, right? Our lives changed, but it's now seen as, par for the course. Ho gaya na? Similarly, jam, right? So part of the challenge with economic reform is, after 6 months, everybody says, "Isme kaun si badi baat thi," right? That's part of the challenge. But there's another challenge, right? I think our own establishment, our own government doesn't sort of sell the policy to the people. There's a kind of inhibition in our country that reform, free markets, let's just keep it quiet. Yeah, let's just keep it quiet because 5 log छह चीजें बोल देंगे. So there's the double aspect. We as a country don't appreciate how much the economy has improved, how much the economy has changed. And secondly, our establishment, our leaders themselves underplay it because I think they worry about some sort of backlash against it. I think both of those aspects need to be celebrated more. There's plenty more to be done. For example, on the job creation front, there's plenty more that can be done. The India stack plus AI, combining the India stack with AI, I think gives us potent measures, potent ways to improve job creation. The India stack itself is a remarkable achievement, right? Credit to Nandan Nilekani ji back in 2009 for conceptualizing Aadhaar. Credit to NDA2 for rolling out the stack. Credit to the entire ecosystem around NPCI for rolling out UPI. But you can do so much more with that. And economic reform is often as straightforward as that. You're building a telecom network, an airport network, a road network, you're expediting GST. On top of that, you're expediting changes in employment laws which make it easier to hire people. We need to understand these changes more as people living here, and I think our leaders need to highlight it more, but plenty more to be done on economic reform, which is why I hope our leaders start celebrating and talking about reform a little bit more.
Is there stuff that you're looking forward to in the next 12 months on this front? We'll keep the tech stack talk for the last, but anything else? I heard you say plenty more. What more are you looking forward to?
I think in the context of what I've said elsewhere is I think we're entering, after 3 years of stellar economic growth, I think we're entering an economic down cycle. And I've always felt that economic down cycle should never be let to go waste. Economic down cycles are often the best time to expedite reform. And I think there's a couple of areas where we can do plenty more. I think on the tax side, we need to carefully look at the tax construct, because we've created a construct in India where if you invest in the stock market and make money, you pay 12.5% LTCGT. if I as a promoter of a company take my corporate surplus and invest that as Marcellus, I do capex, I got to pay 25% tax. Now, you just ask yourself, no, if I as a stock market investor pay 12.5 and I as a promoter pay 25, what am I going to do? I'm going to put all my life savings in the stock market. Is that really going to help the economy in the long run? I'm not so sure. So I made this point before, and if if the folks in Delhi are listening, I would request them to consider it. I think we need to think through the tax structure really carefully, because I think the way the tax structure is now laid out in front of us in India, it's very advantageous and interesting to invest in the stock market, LTCG 12.5, but I'm not so sure how many promoters in India are incented to do private sector capex, right? So there's a whole way to use the tax structure to get the private capex cycle going. For example, consider lowering the corporate tax rate, or consider giving breaks for creating jobs, giving tax breaks for creating jobs, creating tax breaks for doing capex. But I think we really need to look at the tax piece carefully, given that we've entered a economic down cycle. And then coming to the RBI, the monetary side of things, leaving aside the vexed issue of should rates be cut and not, and I think that's a subject that other people can debate later on. I think the way NPAs are reported in India and the sheer amount of time taken for lenders to wake up to what is the true credit quality in the country, I think is inordinate. I think that the central bank needs to figure out ways and means so that lenders can get more real-time data on what is the real credit quality. We have so much information available. The credit bureaus, the central bank, the government should be able to get far more real-time data into the system, into lenders' hands, so that lenders make more accurately informed decision. At the moment, the system works with a lag. आप जिस basis पे आज loan दे रहे हो, that data is dated till a few quarters ago.
I'm sort of just off the book, but just wondering, does that worry you? Because I think I have now heard so many people tell me about the brewing issues in the MFI space, and one person having maybe 9, 10, 11 loans on herself or himself. Is that a big worry?
So I think what's happened, Neeraj, is because of the jam and the India stack piece, it's become very easy for lenders to give a loan. It's become very easy for a borrower to take a loan, right? So my classical example is the chai wala on the street. Because he's getting paid through UPI, the lenders can track his transaction volume, तो फटाफट उसको वो पैसा बांट रहे हैं, right? So Jam, India Stack, UPI has made it very easy to disburse money फटाफट, right? But you're not getting real-time data on credit quality in the country.
Right.
So आपके दिमाग में for lender के दिमाग में जो economy की picture है, जो छवि है economy की, वो 6 महीना outdated है. Because the data on underlying credit quality is coming through with a lag. And I'm sure that can be improved, because if you're lending so fast, but your information on credit quality is dated, then you're bound to end up making mistakes. And a lot of what's happening in unsecured, in MFI, I think is a consequence of that.
So you think if that is changed, it will solve?
So we'll have to have both. If your signing up is 15 सेकंड में आप अंडरराइट कर रहे हो lending, right? Sign up is effortless, digital है सब कुछ, तो आपको डेटा भी उसी प्रकार से फटाफट चाहिए. You can't be saying मेरा sign up फटाफट होगा और मेरा डेटा बाबा आदम के ज़माने से आएगा.
Okay, Saurabh, of the other things, because we have limited time, you've spoken at various forums with me as well about the north and south divide. So the ascent of the peninsular India piece, I'm keeping it aside because I want to talk about two other pieces. One is in the chapter around the rise of Indian women. And while we spoke about the women piece at the start of this conversation, there's an interesting point you make that women entrepreneurship is a very large number. And it possibly is growing. Now, at a point of time when we are all talking about the need for creating jobs, and I'm not taking away that need, by the way, because the population growth is rapid, is this a big antidote that entrepreneurship in India, and particularly women entrepreneurship as well, is on the rise?
Yeah, I think there's embedded in what you said, I think there's a lot of panaceas, there's a lot of hope for the country. So 3 quick pieces I'll rattle off. What I think UPI and India Stack has beautifully done is allowed women who don't want to step out of their house those women who don't want to step out of the house for whatever reason, right? I'm not going to get into why they don't want to step out of the house. They can still build a business sitting in the house, right? So आप अचार बनाओ, cake बनाओ, salad बनाओ, dresses बेचो, Meesho पे चले जाओ, whatever it is. There's many different ways. Courtesy, UPI, NPCI, India Stack, social media. You can build a lovely business sitting at home, and many women are choosing to do that. All power to them. I think this story will grow. Women commerce, I call it. Businesses created by women for women. I think that's going to be a big story in the next 10 years. Second piece hai, as Indian women increasingly get better educated than men, they'll be able to tap into what's good in our country, whether it's borrowing money from the banking system, raising venture capital, building businesses. They'll be able to do that far better than Indian men. As I said in the book, we have referenced data from the RBI that women make way better borrowers than men, right? And on
Can imagine.
Right? And the data from the West suggests women also make better venture capital investments. Women are better investees for VCs to invest in. So if you're a VC, you should be looking at women promoters very favorably, because the data from the West suggests returns बेहतर बनता है in women-centric companies. Right? So the दूसरी story है, women as investors. And the third piece is the last 40 years of data from the developed economy suggests that when a country goes through a phase of automation, mechanization, अब तो AI का ज़माना भी आ गया. As an economy gets more skilled, right, and robotization, automation, AI takes away routine drudgery wala tasks, women rise faster. Right, so women are able to adapt faster to tech changes. बहुत clear data from the West है that women are able to adapt faster to technological change and robotization and mechanization than men can. It could well be that one of the reasons they're able to do so. The data is very clear, by the way. The women adjust faster. It could well be one of the reasons women adjust faster is they're able to climb the education ladder faster, right? So there's many reasons for believing and hoping that both as women commerce, as women entrepreneurs building chota businesses which cater to other women, and why just chota, bada businesses like exactly. Nykaa catering to other women. Secondly, women entrepreneurs becoming borrowers from banks or taking VC money and doing splendidly. And third piece is women employees skilling themselves and thriving in a world where technological change is going to make routine work something that a machine does.
Wow. And we should celebrate this quite stunningly, really. And amazing. And great data, by the way, in that chapter as well. It's fascinating to read it. Saurabh, I have one more question. Because, like I said, the China unraveling piece, you've spoken about it, a number of people have, but it's very exciting data. By the way, I would urge all of you that when you read this book, try and read some of those things. As much as they've been spoken about, the data points are quite fascinating. But I'm really interested in talking about one piece which I left unread on purpose, despite seeing it, which is Ek Step, India Stack 2.0. Right. Tell us about this.
So, around 11-12 years ago, I had a great fortune of meeting Nandan Nilekaniji at Bangalore airport, and he gave me a ride to the city in his car, and he explained to me 12 years ago exactly how India Stack will work out. It was one of those, meetings of a lifetime, where in the space of 1 hour, one decade becomes clear in your head, right? So when we were writing the book and we got towards the end of the book, and I was asking my colleague Nandita, my co-author Nandita, कि अगले 10 साल में क्या होगा? So she said, why don't we go to Bangalore and ask Ek Step? Ek Step is the not-for-profit that Rohini Nilekaniji, Nandan Nilekaniji and Shankar Maruvada have built. So we went to Bangalore, spent a day at Ek Step, and they helped us understand how India Stack, as it currently stands, can be wedded to AI to create a range of solutions which could transform our country. So for example, if you're a 17-year-old, say, Mizo girl, and you want to go to university, but आपके पास पैसे नहीं है, what scholarships, what internships can you access, right? So in a solution called Honest that they have created, the Ek Step people have created, you speak into your phone saying, this is who I am, this is what I need, and then AI finds you from all the other people, from corporates, government, state government, not NGOs, जिसको भी scholarships वगैरह जो दे रहा है, AI matches your need as a Mizo girl who wants to go to university, say physics पढ़ना है आपको, and you need a scholarship or an internship, AI finds you that, right? So they've created a solution for aspiring interns or people aspiring for education to get their education funded, to get vocational training, and to get accreditation. कि फलाने ने इंटर्नशिप की हमारे साथ Indian Institute of Science में या whatever HAL में, and the young aspirant not only gets her education funded, she also gets a vocational qualification, which if Neeraj wanted to hire young science journalist for NDTV Profit, he could check, हाँ ये इसके पास सब कुछ है, right? So whether it is on skilling, whether it is on job creation, whether it is on getting loans, whether it is on getting health solutions, there's enormous amounts that AI can do for our country. To the extent you've given me a platform to talk about it, I'll quickly highlight the 3 gaps that folks are still trying to figure out. पहला है, who will pay for the fact that the bot will have to be trained? Remember, आपको bot को train करना पड़ेगा with who are the people in India who are providing scholarships, who are the people who need it, so that bot सीख जाए कैसे इसको जोड़ा जाए, right? Who's going to pay for that? We don't know, right? At this stage, it's not obvious who's going to pay for the training effort. Secondly, once the training is done, who will pay to run the platform, right? And thirdly, every time a query is loaded, right? So every time a young student speaks into the AI, there's a GPU burn, right? जो भी NVIDIA का chip है, जिसका भी chip है, वो burn होता है, उसका एक खर्चा है. Who's going to bear that? Now my hope is the tech titans who are elsewhere in the world, or the tech titans in our country, or more generally the big corporate foundations in India, my hope is they will step in, because this is genuinely transformational change. AI is giving us the ability to take AI is giving us the chance to take India Stack 1 and turn it into India Stack 2 and solve problems for this country at scale. It's a chance to become immortal, and therefore if you're a corporate titan watching this, I would suggest call up Nandan and Rohini and Shankar Maruvada, take step, and offer to transform India Stack 1 into something which is genuinely going to change the next decade for the country.
Fascinating stuff, Saurabh. So
pleasure.
Good you brought this up, and we'll ensure that this spreads far and wide, this last piece amongst other things. But I must say, really, not because you're sitting here, a really nice book.
Thank you, sir.
So much data.
Very kind.
And thank you for talking to us about it today.
My pleasure. Thank you, Neeraj.
Now, the pleasure was entirely ours. And viewers, I hope you found this conversation as fascinating as I enjoyed doing it. But I can tell you, even though I have done this, the book is a lot more fascinating than this conversation as well. Please do go out and read it. And thanks so much for tuning in.